Good day, friends. Welcome back to the Rogue Report. We're here with another Rogue Core development diary. This is the development diary for June, and I think it's pretty cool. It doesn't really get into what like the next closed update is or anything like that, but it does talk about what they're working on and sort of how the next few months are going to proceed. Because if anyone's been in this for the long haul, as in if anyone's been with Ghost Ship for a while, as like a fan, they have a summer break. Basically, they take basically all of July off, which is completely fair. You should have a summer holiday. It does this does bring to bear some cool notions about what they're going to be doing with like sort of the classes, the number of playable dwarves basically. Not players, sorry, not player count, but the number of playable dwarves. They are going in for to make sure there is a fifth class. I believe there will be 6 on the early access launch of Rogue Core, but that is still time will tell for that. But yeah, so this gets into mainly the 5th class that they're working on for Rogue Core and like end screen like stuff, redesigns and whatnot. So it's cool stuff. Let's just get into it. Let's let Aaron take the wheel, but you can already kind of see what the guy might look like. As in, I think this is very likely pretty much the final design, but we'll get into that later because it's not necessarily. Hello Reclaimers, time for the 3rd monthly update on how things are going over here at Rogue Core Ranch. We've got news on the next playtest, and we'll take a closer look at a couple features we've been working on. Plus, it's time to meet the 5th dwarf to join the Reclaimers. In this issue, our plans for playtest number 3, although as far as I can tell, not necessarily update number 3. A reworked mission end screen, now with more data, I mean that's what you'd expect. Spicy solution for abandoned comrades at the elevator, which we have seen, I just think it hasn't really been something they were talking about like openly until this post. I think it was actually included in the previous update, but they are revealing a sort of redesign of it. I've seen it in their dev streams basically, and the 5th class reveal with them. That's great. Next month, most of us will be off on summer holidays, so this is going to be the last big bulletin until August. We might do a short one in July though, and as usual, a quick disclaimer that everything below is a work in progress and subject to change. If you've got more questions about Rogue Core's development, you can tune into our weekly dev streams to ask us directly, ping us on Discord or ask us on Reddit. And as usual, I will link, not necessarily as usual, but I feel like I did it for the last one of these at least. There'll be a link to Ghost Ship's YouTube channel in the description. I do recommend it very much though watching their Rogue Core streams. They're very interesting, they answer a lot of questions as openly as they can. It's very, very revealing. The only sort of arguable downside is if you keep watching them, you'll kind of have seen a lot of, the game. And it's going to change a lot, but you'll still have seen a lot of it before playing it if you watch those streams. So just sort of keep that in mind if you feel like tuning into their streams. I do just to keep sheerly just for information reasons. Anyway, when's the next round of playtest invites? We're aiming to launch playtest number 3 in the first week of July. So basically, as they go on holiday, so it can sort of just proceed over that time. So I hope it's not like ultra buggy. We've still got a few loose ends to tie up, so there's a small risk of a delay, but fingers crossed for next week. This will be when we'll send out another batch of invites to the closed alpha. We're still not at a point where we need high volume playtesting, so we'll likely invite another limited batch of several thousand more. As usual, all new playtesters will be picked at random, so if you click the request access button on the Steam store page, there's nothing more you need to or can do. If you've got questions about the closed alpha, you might find your answers here. Yes, I'll include the Q&A, link to the Q&A and link to the main store page where you can request access. I'm not going to go through that as a process today, but it's the store page will be linked in the description. You'll be able to find the request access button very easily. Anyway, I assume that they are planning on doing high volume playtest at some point, and I assume that's going to happen. That will happen within the 3rd quarter of the year. So I guess by the end of September, they probably would have done their biggest playtest. So I assume is the plan. Anyway, we basically shut down the office for most of July because everybody goes on vacation. So this 3rd playtest will be the only noteworthy development update in Rogue Core for the month. We'll pick back up once we're back in the office in August, and that's fine because I think this kind of means there probably won't be one of these posts in July, but that's neither here nor there. That's what you expect. Also, this shouldn't have a grappling hook in it. So we'll talk about this in a moment because Aaron talks about it in text form here. Crunching the numbers at the end of a run. At the end of a run, we want you to be able to go nerd mode on all of the numbers and statistics behind each game. What upgrades and artifacts did you pick up along the way? How much DPS did your full auto incendiary warthog end up doing? Who's to blame for all the friendly fire? Stuff like that. We're trying to build a good end of run interface for presenting all that data so it's easy to understand, but we've also got to make sure the game collects and calculates all your run data correctly, which is a technical challenge by itself to implement. We can't just show you a bunch of made up numbers. This isn't the stock market. Very good, sir. Up above is a mock-up of what we got so far. This is just the start, so eventually get more polished, probably with pop-out sections to look at specific weapons and such. I want to strike the right balance of proper complexity, also presenting it in a way that's pretty quick to digest, which is the exact right approach. And yeah, like I said, this is actually a mock-up, so this isn't actually in-game, but it does still take all the right cues. First of all, changing the actual location that the dwarves are in. The current version of the Brocore mission end screen, it is technically the same as the Deep Rock animation. They basically slotted that component of Deep Rock into the same place to make it fit in Roadcore, which is kind of funny, but also not exactly what you want. You want it to be original. This is something you really do want to be original to Roadcore for a lot of reasons. First of all, they're on a different ship. I personally think that the sort of location that the dwarves appear in this end screen should be a literal location from the Ramrod, in my opinion. I think you get away with it on Deep Rock because the space rig is something that we are so clearly not privy to most of. We don't get to explore most of it at all. It's huge. The Ramrod, however, there seems to be this very strong implication, and it is something that they said a while ago, that you would be able to explore the entire Ramrod. So I think this should be a recognisable location when it all is said and done. And also you want to remember this right here is a pop-up, I'm assuming, of a specific character. That's the only thing that's not clear. I assume it's most likely... actually no, it is clear. So you can see they mocked up some C build buttons, and it also says hide build here. So this person who it's covering up, that's who it is. It shows all the equipment that they had. So your throwable, utilities, 2 weapons. I don't know if this actually fully lines up with the amount of equipment you're allowed to acquire during a run. I also don't know exactly what these are, right below it. Because I don't think the weapon upgrades. I think the weapon upgrades are right here on the weapons themselves. But we have general class upgrades, or more so player upgrades than class upgrades, artifacts and buy boosters. Also a bunch of stats: kills, mining, revives, downs, armor collected. I assume this one, I don't know, but it might be weak point hits or something. I think this one is or weak point multiplier. I think this is speed boost acquired, the amount of bonus speed, and this is health regen, maybe. I think it's health or amount of health acquired. And the rest of it is sort of, to be fair, most of it is probably placeholder. It's just to sort of represent what they're trying to do. And yeah, it does look different enough. This looks like the end screen from a different Deep Rock game, rather than the first Deep Rock game. So I think it's all well and good. Obviously, it's a work in progress. It's not actually in-game. So I imagine whatever it ends up being in-game looks probably better than this, and I'm sure we'll see that in the next update. I'm still personally not clear on whether or not they intend for this stuff to be added in that upcoming playtest, like the third playtest. I actually can't really tell. I don't know if that's intentional or not, as in, I have to assume that this stuff is actually not coming in the playtest because they're not talking about update 3, they're just talking about playtest 3. These things are not exactly the same. Anyway, let's talk about that weird thing. So you've got the spaghetti monster here. Let's talk about that. Rescuing abandoned teammates. At the very start of the closed alpha, we noticed an issue if players got downed during the wait for the elevator phase at the end of each level. It's hard to revive your friends then, as you're usually getting swarmed with enemies. And if you've simply abandoned them and got on the elevator, they'd be magically teleported to the next level, right outside the elevator, where you could revive them in peace. This was a simple, stress-free solution, so obviously we had to make it complex and difficult. I understand that. I would have maybe gone the route of just having them be revived at the beginning of the next stage, which doesn't really make sense. It's probably not how it should be. I think this is probably the better option, but this thing will still need to be balanced to make sure it's not too punishing. There should be a punishment. You should try and get your entire team to the elevator in one piece, but the punishment should not be too severe, given that the run is still ongoing. You didn't lose the run, so you shouldn't be completely fucked, you know. Our solution is a new sequence where abandoned dwarves still get transported to the next level, but become trapped in a nasty core-spawned cocoon jail, called name pending, requiring the rest of the team to breach the defences and free them. We wanted this to be a punishment for not reviving teammates during extraction, and a sequence that costs you time and ammo in the subsequent level. Yeah, so it does sound quite punishing. I have seen this in action in the current state that it's in, so they've already amped up the amount of tendrils. It's pretty ridiculous, but it looks pretty cool. So this actually thing here is actually a sort of rocky tentacle that kind of grows out and attacks by growing almost, and it kind of acts like a stabber vine. It's like a rock-based stabber vine. It looks honestly pretty cool. This is kind of like a mini boss almost that crops up if you leave a teammate for dead at the end of a stage. Anyway, let's talk about the new class. Not in time for update number 3 though. So okay, I am going to have to take that now as saying all the stuff up here is part of update 3. So this will be in it. The current new version of the end screen will be in it, but not this 5th class. Unlike DRG, Roll Call is designed from the start to have room for more than 4 classes. We're already working on the 5th one, who's able to pause their state in space-time and phase out for a few seconds of consequence-free mayhem before resetting to where they were before. A tactical time traveller, if you will. The class will not be ready in time for the next closed alpha playtest. We're also not quite sure what to call this class yet, but here is some concept art and early renders. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this for just quickly, because this is the backtracker, and I'm saying that, and that might sound weird to you. So let me explain. A while ago, so November last year, when we first saw Road Core in motion, and they sort of had some. They really were in like a testing environment in game, but so therefore they had some like dev tools available, like for spawning stuff and changing classes. There were 2 classes available for like the devs to switch to that aren't in the current version of the game, and that was the Gorgon and the Backtracker. The Backtracker obviously does sound like some kind of time travel character. Think of the phase rewind booster from Titanfall 2. Obviously, phase shifting was a thing in Titanfall 2, but phase rewind was more specifically like you phase out of space and go back in time. It's quite literally what this guy is. However, of course, what they're implying here is that it won't be called the Backtracker. I'm just telling you that this is the evolution of that idea. They already have multiple ideas for classes that are going to, I think, eventually make it through. Like I said, the Gorgon is another one, which I believe will eventually make it in, and it will likely be another female dwarf, like how the Falconeer is a female, in case you didn't know. Anyways, let's talk about the models briefly, because obviously some of these are more definitively concept art, and it's all great, but I think this is a very finished model, as in not necessarily the model they'll use, but it is a finished model, and I think it's fantastic. I especially like the details on the dwarf's face, like having things like this. He's clearly got more rugged, pale skin and this definitive scar through his face, and I love stuff like that because it really sells the idea that in Rocore these are more so characters than classes. You are kind of assuming the role of a character, which would imply the game be class locked, so you could never duplicate. I don't think that's the case. As far as I know, that's not the case, and it probably shouldn't be. But these characteristics still help add a different flavour and make it feel like these are characters more than they are just roles that you're playing. Even though they shouldn't be like limited in that way. So I didn't actually finish the post. So it looks great. I think that will get in for update 4, and obviously that sounds quite close to the finishing line in a lot of ways, but I still think their plan is to get 6 classes in on launch. They don't have to. Technically, when it comes down to it, they really only need 1 more than Deep Rock to sell the fact that this game is going to have more classes than Deep Rock. That's all they technically need, but I imagine they probably would rather have an even number overall still. So I am betting that they still want to have 6 classes on launch. Whether or not that will happen is up in the air. Clearly, these do take quite a bit of effort, but they are still dedicated to making sure the game has more than 4 classes, which is good. Anyway, let's wrap this up. As mentioned earlier, most of the office is off on summer holidays in July, so it'll be pretty quiet from our end. Hopefully, you'll have another time to put a short dev diary for the month. Anyway, okay, fair enough, Aaron, you're a champ. Anything specific you want to read about for a future dev diary, any features you really want or would love to get a closer look at, let me know in the comments. Hope everybody's having a good summer so far. Rock and Stone, with love, Aaron, Go Shit Games. Big love to you, Aaron. You do a fantastic job. I still want your job. This is great stuff. Class looks great. End screen looks great. That weird sort of jail thing seems like a cool idea. I wonder how it'll go down though. Really, when it comes to feedback, we'll just have to wait and see. Until then, because obviously I'll certainly see you again. I imagine there will be a Ghost Ship Dispatch, a newsletter this month. I think it will cover it, especially because I think last time, or maybe the time before, I didn't cover both. I didn't cover the newsletter one time. I think it's because they literally came out on the same day, which kind of just peeved me, because I didn't think they were different enough either. But I think I am now dedicated to doing all of those things. I think I will be doing the newsletter no matter what. But of course, you'll see me with the next dev diary. But I'm still doing Overclock showcases every week, so please tune in for that. And who knows if anything else might happen in between now and then on the channel. I don't know. I certainly would like it to. Anyway, until then, this has been Barrel Vision. It's been the Rogue Report. If you enjoyed this, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you want to see more stuff like this, and you want to stay on top of everything to Deep Rock and Rogue Core, which is what this is, then please also click the bell, and I'll see you
next time.